Thank you for joining us. This is Health Your Own Way podcast, and I am your host, Mo Atkins. Welcome to another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about what life lessons you can learn from wrestling. Yes, I said wrestling. We're going to be talking about wrestling. You know, it is health, it is physical activities. So, my guest today is Donald G. Skip Mondragon. I think I got it. Okay. I've been working. He's an MD, has practiced internal medicine, adult medicine for over 30 years. Colonel Mondragon is a 26-year Army veteran, spent 30 months in combat zone, and is a national veteran wrestling champion. So thank you. And I know he likes to be called Skip, so we're going to be calling him Skip through the whole day, through the whole conversation.
Very good, Mo.
So thank you. Welcome, Skip. And how are you feeling today, Skip?
I am very well. Thank you, Mo. I'm delighted to be here with you.
I'm going to be interested in having this conversation because, you know what, I've never really thought about learning life lessons from wrestling, but I think in some way, some activities you do, you kind of build some form of life lessons out of it. So I'm interested to hear your story. With that said, Skip, give us a high level summary of who you are and how did wrestling become part of your life? Because you meant like you're an MD, you're a veteran. So how do you go from doctor to Army to wrestling?
Wrestling's been a part of my life for over 50 years. I was typically the smallest kid in my class. I was totally athletic inept. I could not catch, I could not kick, I could not throw a ball. I failed at tetherball.
Okay.
I can remember in fourth grade, our teacher would take us out to the chin-up bar and test the boys on chin-ups and the girls on bent arm hang, how long the girls could hold the bent arm hang. And I would dread my name being called. And finally, she'd say, all right, Skip, it's your turn. And I'd jump up to the lowest bar and I'd cut, kick, and grunt and pull with all my might. And I couldn't do one chin-up. And the shame and the humiliation of that. As I said, I failed at every sport. Baseball, basketball, football, trying to run, everything, gymnastics. Then in eighth grade, I was in a new school. And the first time I thought when I went out for wrestling after a practice or two, I think I could be good at this.
Okay.
I think I might be really good at this. I made the varsity team as an eighth grader, the only eighth grader on the varsity team. However, I didn't win a match that year. The next year, I was the best wrestler in the room. But again, I didn't win a match. Why? Because I get so worked up the day before the match. I couldn't sleep the night before. I toss and turn. I'd be utterly exhausted, both physically and mentally, when I'd go into that match. The summer, however, after that, I wrestled my first freestyle tournament. Freestyle is one of the Olympic wrestling styles.
Okay.
So let me clarify for our listeners, we're not talking WWE wrestling. We're talking amateur wrestling. Okay. And I wrestled in junior high, the lowest weight class, 85 pounds.
Okay, that's low.
And then after my ninth grade year, I'm wrestling this freestyle tournament. And I win my very first match. I win my second match.
Congratulations.
I win my third match. I win my fourth match. And now I'm going for the championship.
What's the difference?
What's the difference? I finally mentally, I turned the corner.
Okay.
And I win the tournament. And my coach asked me afterwards, you know who this kid was you're wrestling? I have no idea, coach. And he said, well, this kid won the tournament last year. And that further cemented my love for this sport. And I went on, was the two-time district champion in high school, state runner-up, honorable mention All-American, won many, many state freestyle tournaments, placed in 2 national freestyle tournaments, and graduated as an honorable mention All-American in high school. Now, fast forward. See, because I was involved with my boys who wrestled. I have four boys, helped coach throughout the years, and then wrestled some after high school, both in college and then freestyle. But I hadn't wrestled in over 30 years. Okay. And then in 2012, I got the bug again. And so I asked my 18-year-old son, my youngest, if he would train with me. And he said yes. So we trained, went to Tucson, Arizona in May of 2012 and competed. And it was arduous. You know, I was 56 years old at the time. And again, competing in the lightest weight class, it was the 58 kilogram class, which is about little over 127 pounds. And I was in excellent shape to start with, but wrestling is a different beast. And I would train with him. And the first 6 weeks, I'd come home. Oh, dude, honey, I think I would go soak in the tub. And she would joke and say, all right, old man, you think you had enough yet? No, honey, I don't think so. Then I'd sit on the couch after supper. I'd have ice packs on the shoulder, on the knee, on my elbows. But we went to Tucson, and Joey and we won a national championship.
Congratulations.
And then afterwards, we're standing there enjoying the fruits of our labor. And Joey turns to me and he says, Dad, was it worth it? All those hot baths and ice packs? I said, oh, yes.
Yeah.
It was worth it.
I can see that.
So that was my last. Well, actually, I competed the next year and I was a national runner-up. So I've had this love affair. In fact, my kids will call me a wrestling groupie because
Did you say wrestling groupie? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So
okay, I just want to make sure I heard it clear. I wanted to make sure.
So they affectionately call me that because I collect memorabilia. I've got signed posters. I've got signed wrestling cards of wrestling greats.
Oh, good.
I take pictures with wrestling greats. I've befriended Olympians and world champions and national champions.
Okay. I like
this
that.
This is part and parcel of who I am. I read about it. I watch it. I study it. I love the sport of wrestling. I coach it on and off over the years.
So for me, listening to you talk, because at 56, who's wrestling? Tell me, Skid. Okay, I'm just gonna be.
Who's wrestling? Not very many men. Not very many men. Let me tell you that it is the few, the fearless, and yes, it's not very many of us that are still wrestling.
So you have to explain to us what made. I know you said you had the bug, but what made you feel like you want to get back into it at the age of 56? Even at the age of 40, people are still struggling. At the age of 20, people are still struggling. You do it at 56.
Well, as I said, I've had this love affair with wrestling throughout my life, but I still felt that I had the ability to compete. That was it. I still had the ability to compete, and I wanted to prove to myself I could win.
Oh, so then what did you learn? Okay, go ahead.
What did I learn?
Yeah.
Wrestling has taught me determination, for one. That it's taught me persistence, that you have got to persist, because I realized early on that I didn't have the athletic skills, the innate athletic skills that a lot of other boys had. I wasn't as strong. I wasn't as quick. I didn't have the balance and the innate athletic prowess that other boys had. But I determined that nobody was going to outwork me, that I was going to work harder than anybody else. And so I learned that dedication, persistence, and determination can trump talent. That I saw boys that were so much more talented athletically than I was, but they were lazy. And so
they're entitled.
I would surpass them. I would beat them on the mat. I could defeat them because they weren't willing to work. They weren't willing to put in the effort. I also saw that wrestling is so demanding that it will make some great athletes look like wimps. I've seen all-American athletes in other sports. I saw this in a all-American in two sports in high school. He came out and he stepped in to wrestle heavyweight for us in junior high, and he did not fare well. And he went on, as I say, as a 2 and almost a 3 time All-American in 3 different sports in high school. And he was recently inducted into the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. So this shows you how demanding it is. And you would just see guys that would just think, 6 minutes. Yeah, anybody can do that. And you get them down on the mat, and after 2 or 3 minutes, and they crawl off the mat and say, oh my goodness, that's the hardest thing I've ever tried. Oh man.
I can see why. And I did some research on you, and I realized, or I found that you wrote a book called Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps, right? Lessons learned from an amateur wrestler. So yes, you have to explain to me, because I know that we've listened to you talk about how you started at 56. Kudos to you, because at 56, I'm lying on the beach, comfortable. I'm just like, that's where I want to be at 56. But regardless, that's just me. But I think for me, it's the book itself again was, let me repeat. Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps. Lessons learned from an amateur wrestler fighting to trump over depression. So why that title? Because that's a significant title.
Once again, as I said, it's drawn from my life. Wrestling has been part and parcel of who I am.
Okay.
So I suffered from major depression. I became a casualty of depression my 25th into my 26th year of my Army career, that last year that I served. And those lessons that I learned in wrestling, determination, persistence, dedication, all I had to draw upon that in my recovery. There's also this idea of what I call guts. And guts is that internal fortitude, that determination that I am going to do whatever it requires to win.
Like that.
And so that when I was in that deep, dark pit, when I was down so low that I had to determine, no matter what, I am going to get better. I can remember times sitting on the edge of the bed with my sweetheart, my wife of 40 years now, Sherry, tears streaming down my face. And I would tell her, honey, it's not always going to be like this. Honey, I am going to get better. And I knew I was going to get better. And I was determined to get better. And it was, as painful as things were, I was determined I was going to get better. And so that wrestling toughness had to come to bear. And so hence the title of my book, Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps. That depression so beats you down. I was beat up, beaten down, and broken. And I was on my back. It was like I had been wrestling with this 350-pound gorilla. And no matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't get up. So I needed a hand up. And sometimes in life, we all need a hand up. So I needed help from others. I needed coaches. And so I reached out. I had a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, my primary care physician, my family, my friends, and my faith, all helping me to recover. So we all need people in our life that are helping us. There's also this principle we call keep your head up. And in wrestling, we're always telling, especially young wrestlers, keep your head up, because there's a tendency for them to drop their head. Because that makes them susceptible to, if we're competing on our feet, what we call the neutral position on our feet, you drop your head, you're at risk of being taken to the mat. If you're down on the mat and your opponent's on top of you and you drop your head, now you're at risk of the opponent turning you over to pin you. Okay. And the analogy in life is, if you think about it, what happens when we're feeling tired or we're feeling ashamed or we're feeling defeated. Think about the posture.
Curling. Like we kind of curl
Now,
into a ball. Yeah.
what happens when you're feeling strong? You're
Raise up
feeling
your chest.
elated. You're feeling triumphant. Head goes up, your shoulders come back, your chest comes out. And you can see that posture in athletic competitions. You can look at the body posture and you can see who the winner is very easily. And so it is in life. And by your posture, you can change your physiology.
Sure.
I tell
100%.
people, psychology follows physiology and physiology follows psychology.
Fair
By
enough.
changing your posture, you can change your physiology. Taking this strong posture, you can raise your testosterone, lower your cortisol. It increases your concentration, your creativity, lowers your stress, lowers your blood pressure, lowers your heart rate, increases strength and endurance
Sure.
just from that strong posture. Conversely, this weak, deflated posture lowers your testosterone, your creativity, your immunity, your strength, your endurance, increases your stress hormone cortisol. It does all of these things simply by that change in posture. So psychology follows physiology, physiology
Yeah.
follows psychology. So keep your head up. That's one thing that wrestling has taught me and had to be applied. You know, that you need a team. In wrestling, you need a team. You need your coach. You need your training partner. And you need support from family and friends to get through the rigors of wrestling.
When you-
need a team.
When you say that, that gives me a great leeway because on your website, I believe that when you created the book, you created a community for men that were dealing with depression and stigma. So when you say you need a team, is that the same thing as needing a community that you created for those people that are dealing with kind of that situation?
Absolutely. That's part of that team that you need. I call it family, friends, faith, but also this community. Now, men have this tendency where we suffer in silence.
Yes.
I did that for months and months and months and months. I just got to be tougher. I just got to push through it. See, because that's the mentality of wrestling. Just push harder, gut it out. In fact, we use that term in wrestling, gut it out. Just keep pushing harder and harder. And that mentality had served me well throughout life. But I only got worse and worse as I sunk down into that deeper and deeper into that dark pit of depression. And so I needed help. And so we do need a community. And men especially, we need to be able to reach out. We need to be able to admit, I'm hurting. I'm struggling. I need help. And not feel weak in doing so. And understand that we all need help from time to time. That is part of the human condition. That doesn't make us less a man. That doesn't mean we're wimps. It just simply means we're humans. And to admit I'm hurting and to learn to speak about it, to share with other men, and to understand, yes, we're going to need help from time to time. And that's okay.
It's fair. And I think a lot of people may be afraid to go talk to somebody that they know personally or see help. So if somebody wanted to reach out and, be part of your community or maybe reach out to you to see how you did or what the best practice is, what's the best platform to reach you out on?
Well, they can reach me most easily on my website.
Okay.
Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps. And from there, they could email me and enter into a discussion because they could find me on other platforms. They could find me on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and even Instagram.
We'll have the website on.
Sure, but that would be the easiest place to find me. And of course, they could find out more about those principles that I talk about because I go into detail with these principles in Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps. Because that also speaks not just to recovering from depression, but how to maintain then that health and wellness for men. Because as I said, as men, we tend to suffer in silence and feel like we're the only ones that struggle with this. No, we're not.
It's true. Like, so when I heard your name or saw it, I did some research on you, and one of your favorite quotes I liked was life will knock you on your back. So I saw it on your Facebook. It says life will knock you on your back. And it takes me back to one of the quotes Les Brown has that says, when life knocks you down, try to land on your back. Life will knock you down, try to land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. So that meant I wanted to say that because I really love that. And it just hit me. I was like, okay, this is someone I want to talk to, because at least he has the same mentality and respect still on what life should be like. And I think for a lot of people, what I'm getting from you, and you can correct me wrong, is that, with wrestling, there's different analogies. There's different ways to look at things. You mentioned the fact that, when you look up instead of looking down, that can improve your posture, improve your chances, and just improve the way you see yourself. And,
Yes.
And at the age of 56, I'm still going back to that, Skip. I'm sorry. At the age of 56, I'm sorry. I'm not going to let that one go. At the age of 56, if you're looking at Skip, he did it. I think it's more of the fact that you didn't let age stop you. You didn't let the fact that it was going to be struggling. You're going to have ice on your body. It was going to be painful, but you went for it, right? And it helped you. Even though your wife was asking you, old man, why don't you stop? You ignored it all and you kept going. So I commend you for that. I think, if anybody is looking for, some of the tools that he's learned and he wants to share, please reach out to him. I think from what I'm getting from you is basically, what, it's going to suck. Like, it's going to be suck. But if you persist and you work on it, and if you are struggling with depression or any form, like, seek help. And if you don't want to speak to anybody specifically, join a community like Skip has that can help you with some of the lessons he's learned. Did I get that right? Did I get an idea of what we were talking about today, Skip?
Yes, indeed. And we all need help, and don't be hesitant to reach out to professional help. I did. And I'm so delighted that I did, because I needed that. As I said, I needed a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist, my primary care physician, all helping me to get better.
I think before I let you go, is there anything that you want to share that we haven't discussed to anybody that's listening or watching?
I would like to share just a few other things there very quickly. One is the idea that prevention always trumps rehab. I had this tendency to overtrain.
Okay.
And with overtraining, you put yourself in the position of getting injuries. And so I suffered various injuries due to overtraining. Whereas at the first, let me give you a quick example. I was practicing judo with a judo player that was on staff at Eisenhower Army Medical Center, the last place I was stationed. Being a tough wrestler, okay, I'm going to do this. Well, he assigned me to practice this foot sweep because I got to practice a little bit late, did our warm up, and he was working with some kids that were going to go to a tournament. So he said, work on this. Well, I started working on it and working on it and working on it. I started feeling a twinge in my hamstrings, but being the tough wrestler, okay, I'm not going to complain. So I kept working on it. Finally, he got free. We scrimmaged a little bit and then finished practice and went to shower. By the time I got finished with the shower, my hamstrings were hurting. By the time I got home, they were excruciating. Oh my gosh, I was in excruciating pain. The next couple of weeks, I could hardly sit and stand. The pain was so bad. And it took months for my left hamstring to heal. I ended up having to go to physical therapy, and it took several months for that to heal. Why? Because prevention would have trumped rehab. And that's the same thing for us mentally and emotionally. When we're starting to hurt, if we reach out and say, I'm hurting, not to wait till it gets to the point what I call pull a skip, because I ended up curled up in the fetal position.
You said
under
pull
the
a
desk
skip?
in my office.
Is that what you just said?
I said, don't pull a skip. End up like me, curled up in a fetal position under my desk in my office, where I had gotten so low because of that denial and keep trying to push through and push through. So prevention trumps rehab.
I love that.
The other is laughter is good medicine. Proverbs 17:22 is one of my favorite verses. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine. You see, I have written that prescription for thousands of patients. And I tell them, this medication you can take daily. You see, this medication doesn't have any bad side effects. This medication doesn't have any drug-to-drug interactions, and you cannot overdose on this medication.
Right.
So each and every day, laugh and laugh liberally. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine.
Love that. That's nice. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's actually really good. I'm going to prescribe that to myself once I just laugh more often.
Indeed.
I want to say thank you for being part of this conversation. I've learned a lot. I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I find that a lot of people don't realize that there's certain activities out there that could actually be life lessons. And I'm glad that you found something that helped you and that you can share, and you created a community out of what you learned. We're glad to have you join us. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, share with anyone that needs to be empowered and inspired. And don't forget to join us next week for the next episode of Health Your Own Way podcast. Have a good day, you guys.